The stage lights burn bright. The audience hums with anticipation, and the air crackles with tension. It's a night like any other on Jimmy Kimmel Live, or so it seems. But tonight, Hollywood legend Clint Eastwood, the man who stared down outlaws and defined grit for generations, steps onto the set. What begins as a routine talk show appearance spirals into an unforgettable clash of wills. A verbal showdown that will be replayed, dissected, and debated for years. This is no ordinary interview. This is the moment when Eastwood and Kimmel lock horns. Egos flare, and the stage becomes a battleground. Buckle up for the most explosive live TV moment of the year. The camera pans across the vibrant Los Angeles studio, the crowd buzzing as the iconic theme music fades. Jimmy Kimmel, sharp in a tailored suit, grins from behind his desk. Across from him sits Clint Eastwood, his steely gaze unwavering, a living legend whose presence commands silence. The audience senses something big is coming, and they're not wrong. Jimmy Kimmel said, "Clint Eastwood, everybody, the man, the myth, the squint. Welcome to the show. Clint, you've been making movies for what, 7 decades? How do you keep that fire burning?" Clint Eastwood said, "Fire's easy, Jimmy. You just don't let the world tell you to sit down and shut up. Keep moving. Keep creating. That's what I do." The crowd cheers, but Jimmy leans forward, his smile playful yet pointed. Jimmy Kimmel said, "Oh, I hear you. But let's be real, Clint. You're 94, still directing, still acting. Some folks out there, haters maybe, say it's time to hang up the spurs. What do you say to them?" Clint's eyes narrow, the faintest smirk tugging at his lips. The audience holds its breath. Clint Eastwood said, "Haters? I've been dodging their bullets since the 50s. If they think age is going to stop me, they're dumber than a sack of hammers. You don't quit because the calendar flips. You quit when you've got nothing left to say, and I've got plenty." The crowd erupts, but Jimmy's grin sharpens. He's not backing down. Jimmy Kimmel said, "Okay, tough guy. I love the grit. But let's talk about today's Hollywood. You've been vocal about how it's changed. Some say for the worse. You've called out woke culture, streaming platforms, even superhero movies. Is this just an old cowboy yelling at clouds? Or do you really think the industry's lost its way?" Clint leans back, his voice low but cutting. Clint Eastwood said, "It's not about yelling, Jimmy. It's about truth. Hollywood used to tell stories that hit you in the gut, real people, real stakes. Now it's all green screens and groupthink. You can't say what you think without some suit or keyboard warrior crying foul. I make movies for folks who want substance, not sermons." The audience splits, half cheering, half murmuring. Jimmy raises an eyebrow, sensing blood in the water. Jimmy Kimmel said, "Whoa, Clint, you're throwing punches. But hold up, isn't that a bit hypocritical? You've made a fortune in this industry. And let's not forget, your films like Dirty Harry got heat back in the day for being too violent, too out there. Now you're the one wagging your finger at the new guard." Clint's jaw tightens, but his voice stays steady. Clint Eastwood said, "Don't twist my words, kid. I took heat because my films made people think, made them feel something. They didn't pander. Today's movies, half of them are corporate checklists. You've got studios scared of their own shadows, rewriting scripts to please the loudest mob on X. That's not art. That's cowardice." The crowd roars, some clapping, others whispering. Jimmy leans in, his tone sharp but teasing. Jimmy Kimmel said, "Okay, cowboy, you're preaching now, but let's get specific. You've slammed woke culture. Your words, not mine. What's that even mean to you? Because to a lot of folks, it's just about fairness, inclusion, maybe righting some wrongs. Are you saying that's all bunk?" Clint's eyes flash and he pointed a finger, his voice gravelly but firm. Clint Eastwood said, "Fairness? I'm all for it. Treat everyone square. No question. But this woke business isn't about that. It's about control. Telling people what to say, what to think, what stories are allowed to tell. You step out of line, they don't debate you. They bury you. I've seen it. Good filmmakers, good actors, sidelined for speaking their mind. That's not progress. That's a lynch mob with better branding." The audience gasps and Jimmy's smile falters for a split second. He recovers, but the gloves are off. Jimmy Kimmel said, "Whoa, Clint Lynch mob? That's a heavy term. You're saying people pushing for change, diversity, representation are just bullies in disguise? Because I gotta tell you, I've had folks on this show who say the industry's finally opening doors that were locked for decades. You're dismissing that." Clint doesn't blink, his voice like steel. Clint Eastwood said, "I'm not dismissing nothing. Talent should win. Period. Doesn't matter your color, your background, your story. But forcing quotas, rewriting history, or canceling folks for a bad tweet from 2009, that's not opening doors. That's building new cages. You want a better industry? Make better movies, not better manifestos." The crowd's divided now, half cheering Clint's defiance, half booing his bluntness. Jimmy senses a heat and pivots, his tone sly. Jimmy Kimmel said, "All right, Clint, you're not pulling punches. But let's talk about you. Your last film, Juror Nerd 2, got solid reviews, but some critics said it felt dated, like you're stuck in the 70s, making movies for a world that doesn't exist anymore. How do you respond to that?" Clint's smirk returns, but there's fire in his eyes. Clint Eastwood said, "Dated? That's what they call when a movie's got guts instead of CGI. Critics can whine all they want. My films are for the folks who still want stories about real people, not avatars. You think the world's changed so much? People still hurt, still fight, still love. That's what I show. If that's dated, then I'm proud to be out of step." Jimmy chuckles, but it's tense. He's not letting Clint off easy. Jimmy Kimmel said, "Fair enough, but let's not pretend you're above the game. You played ball with the studios, taking their money, worked the system. Now you're biting the hand that fed you. Isn't that a little convenient now that you're the elder statesman?" Clint leans forward, his voice dropping to a near growl. Clint Eastwood said, "Don't lecture me about playing ball, Jimmy. I fought for every inch in this town. Studios didn't hand me nothing. I earned it. And yeah, I've worked with them, but I never bowed. You think I'm biting their hand? Good. Maybe it'll wake them up. They're sleepwalking through a creative drought, and I'm not here to clap for mediocrity." The audience erupts, some standing, others shouting. Jimmy raises his hands, trying to regain control. Jimmy Kimmel said, all right, settle down, folks. Clint, I gotta say, you're bringing the heat, but let's shift gears. You're a legend, no question, but you've also got a rep for being, let's say, uncompromising. Some actors, directors, they say working with you is like wrangling a grizzly. Is that fair?" Clint chuckles, but it's a dry, dangerous sound. Clint Eastwood said, "If by uncompromising you mean I don't suffer fools, then yeah, it's fair. I've got no time for egos or half measures. You show up, do the work, tell the truth. If that makes me a grizzly, then roar. But the people who complain, they're usually the ones who couldn't hack it." Jimmy's eyes gleam, sensing an opening. Jimmy Kimmel said, "Oh, shots fired. But come on, Clint, you've worked with some heavy hitters. Morgan Freeman, Gene Hackman, Meryl Streep. They all sing your praises. So maybe it's not about hacking it. Maybe it's about you being, I don't know, a little intense. Ever think you might scare people off?" Clint's gaze is unflinching, his voice calm but lethal. Clint Eastwood said, "Scare him? Good. Fear is a great motivator. You think Unforgiven got made because I was handing out hugs? I push people to be their best. If they can't handle it, they're in the wrong business. This ain't a daycare. It's a craft." The crowd's on edge, sensing the escalating tension. Jimmy leans back, his tone shifting to something more confrontational. Jimmy Kimmel said, "Okay, but let's talk about that craft. You've made some of the most iconic films ever, the good, the bad, and the ugly $1 Million Baby. But you've also got critics who say your politics bleed into your work. American Sniper, for instance, some call it a love letter to war. You've said you're libertarian, but a lot of folks peg you as a hard-right conservative. Is that fair, or are they missing the point?" Clint's eyes narrow, and he leans forward, his voice deliberate. Clint Eastwood said, "They're missing the point by a mile. My films aren't propaganda. They're stories. American Sniper wasn't about war. It was about a man, his choices, his scars. I don't make movies to preach. I make them to ask questions. People want to slap a label on me? Fine. But I'm not here to carry anyone's flag, left, right, or center. I'm here to tell the truth as I see it. Jimmy's not backing down, his voice rising slightly. Jimmy Kimmel said, "Truth, huh? That's a big word. But let's be real, Clint. Your truth, like in Gran Torino, has rubbed people the wrong way. Some say it's insensitive, even offensive. You got fans who love your no-filter style, but others say it's reckless in today's world. You ever worry you're alienating half your audience?" Clint's smirk is gone now, replaced by a hard stare. Clint Eastwood said, "Alienate? I don't make movies to win a popularity contest. If you're watching my work and all you see is offensive, you're not watching close enough. Gran Torino was about redemption, sacrifice, not some cheap stereotype. You don't like it? Change the channel. But don't ask me to sand down the edges to make you comfortable. Life ain't comfortable. The audience is electric. Some cheering, others booing. Jimmy's smile is tight, and he shifts in his seat. Jimmy Kimmel said, "Wow, Clint, you're doubling down. But let's talk about that change the channel vibe. You've been vocal about free speech, about people being too sensitive. Yet here you are, a guy who's had the loudest megaphone in Hollywood for decades. Isn't it a bit rich to play the victim when you're the one with the power?" Clint's voice drops, each word like a hammer. Clint Eastwood said, "Victim? Don't put that word in my mouth. I've never asked for pity. I've got a megaphone because I earned it through work, not whining. And free speech. It's not about me. It's about the kid with a script, the director with a vision, who gets told no because their story doesn't fit the approved narrative. That's who I'm fighting for. Not myself. I'm doing just fine." The crowd's roars are deafening, and Jimmy struggles to keep the reins. He raises a hand, his tone sharp. Jimmy Kimmel said, "All right, Clint, you're making your case. But let's not kid ourselves. You're a titan in this industry. When you talk, people listen. So when you rail against woke Hollywood or cancel culture, it's not just an opinion. It's a signal. You're influencing millions. Ever think about the responsibility that comes with that?" Clint's eyes lock onto Jimmy's, unyielding. Clint Eastwood said, "Responsibility? My responsibility is to make good art, to tell stories that matter, not to babysit people's feelings. If my words make waves, good. Maybe it'll shake some sense into an industry that's forgotten how to think for itself. You want me to tiptoe? You got the wrong guy." The audience is on its feet, the studio shaking with cheers and jeers. Jimmy's smile is gone, replaced by a steely resolve. Jimmy Kimmel said, "Okay, Clint, you're not tiptoeing. That's clear, but let's cut to the chase. You're sitting here throwing haymakers at Hollywood, at the culture, at, let's be honest, people like me. You say it's about truth, but it feels personal. So level with us. What's really driving this? Is this about legacy, or are you just mad at the world?" Clint pauses, his face unreadable. Then he leans forward, his voice low and searing. Clint Eastwood said, "Personal? Maybe. I've watched this industry. I love turning into a machine that grinds up originality and spits out safe, soulless product. I've seen friends silenced, careers derailed, all because they didn't kneel to the right dogma. I'm not mad at the world, Jimmy. I'm mad at the cowards who let it get this way. And my legacy? It'll stand or fall on my work, not on whether I made nice with the right crowd." The crowd explodes. Jimmy's had enough. He stands, his voice sharp. Jimmy Kimmel said, "Cowards, huh? That's a bold word, Clint. But maybe the real cowardice is refusing to evolve, clinging to a past that doesn't exist anymore. You're a legend, no question. But this, calling everyone else out while acting untouchable, that's not truth. That's ego." Clint rises, towering despite his age, his voice a growl. Clint Eastwood said, "Ego? Kid, I've been called worse by better. You want to talk evolution? I've adapted to every decade, every trend, and I'm still here. But I don't bend in nonsense. And I don't bow to hosts who think they can school me. You want me off your stage? Say it." The audience is in chaos, chanting Clint's name, others shouting for Jimmy. The tension is unbearable. Jimmy Kimmel said, "All right, Clint, you want to go there? Maybe it's time to cool off. Let's take a break." Clint's eyes don't leave Jimmy's as he steps away. The crowd roaring. The camera cuts to black. But the moment is far from over. This wasn't just a talk show segment. This was a cultural earthquake, a clash of titans that exposed the fault lines in industry and a nation. Clint Eastwood versus Jimmy Kimmel. Legend versus provocateur. Truth versus spectacle. The debate rages on, but one thing's certain: no one will forget this night.